From Worldwide Technology, this is the AI Proving Ground podcast. We're living through a moment in enterprise technology where the velocity of innovation is outpacing the velocity of control. Every week, AI becomes more embedded inside decisions, workflows, and customer experiences. But something else is happening too, an undercurrent of anxiety from the people responsible for keeping all of this secure. As I was preparing for this episode, I came across a recent LinkedIn post from our guest, Shawn Womke at F5, where he pointed out something many people feel but don't always say out loud. He said, quote, "While many are reaping the benefits of AI, the majority of cybersecurity professionals are concerned with the growing and evolving attack surface that AI brings." And that gets to the heart of an honest assessment we hear a lot. Boards and executive teams are pushing AI as a mandate, but for security teams, alarms are going off and red flags are being raised. In many cases, they're being asked to secure something that's moving faster than they are. So today, we want to talk honestly about what readiness actually looks like, why only a small percentage of companies feel confident in their AI strategy, and what needs to change so teams can adopt AI without creating new risks. To do that, Shawn is joined by Konrad from WWT, two leaders who spend their time working directly with organizations trying to modernize their AI approach while staying secure. They see what's working, what isn't, and why so many teams feel caught in the middle. This is the AI Proving Ground podcast. Everything AI, all in one place. Let's get into the conversation. Well, Chris, welcome back to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Brian. It's always good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And Shawn, first timer, welcome to the AI Proving Ground podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Brian. Great to be here, and excited to talk with you and Chris today.
Perfect. Shawn, I do want to start with you. I was looking over your LinkedIn profile and some research here. You had a recent post in which you said, while many are reaping the benefits of AI, the majority of cybersecurity professionals are concerned with the growing and evolving attack surface that AI brings. So, I'm wondering, why are the alarms going off in the world of cyber while so many in the world, enterprise or consumer, are adopting this transformational technology?
Yeah, it's a great question, Brian. And I think that, for all the benefits that we're starting to see from AI around efficiency gains that we're getting, ability to create content and the ability to, make decisions with AI, I think there's a couple of challenges. And a lot of that has come from just, the rate of adoption that we've seen this happen. I think that the amount of use that we're seeing from this and the speed of deployment, it often outpaces organizations' abilities to really control and secure it effectively. Teams are under immense pressure to use AI. I mean, there's many corporate initiatives to make sure you're using it, improve the efficiencies that you're having it. And I think that oftentimes that rush to that efficiency can sometimes be at the expense of security. And so I think as it becomes embedded in everything that we do, it puts cyber teams on edge, and it really, requires us to not only innovate with speed, but also think about how we're taking the time to think about how we're going to secure this so that we're able to control the risk that comes along with it.
Yeah. Chris, that's, certainly a high level assessment here. What are you hearing on the, maybe a little bit more closer to the ground, real world client-based conversations? What are you hearing about the pace of that adoption versus the ability for all of us to secure it?
Yeah, just to follow up on what Shawn had just said, just really resonates with me. Just, AI is embedded into everything. Security needs to be embedded into everything. And when I look at just AI in general, it's moving faster than most governance models can adapt. I mean, we're watching organizations globally just race to operationalize AI for their business. But then you got to look at the controls. You got to look at things like visibility, accountability. I don't think they've caught up yet. And worldwide, we're certainly seeing a widening gap between AI experiments and AI protection. And that's really where the risk is. The technology itself isn't a threat. It's the speed of adoption, Shawn talked about, without structure. That's the threat.
Yeah. And I think, Chris, that's a great point. And, one of the things that I think security teams are always playing catch up to some extent with the work that they're doing. It seems like But I think, to compound that too, I think is the talent that's out there and the number of people who really understand these kinds of technologies deeply to be able to provide that governance, to be able to think, deeply about how you secure this and how you protect your companies from risk is also, I think it's also another barrier for security teams that they've got to overcome.
Yeah, Shawn, stick with you here. F5 recently came out with a research report that was fantastic, by the way. I think it was called the State of AI Application Strategy for AI Readiness. If anybody hasn't seen it out there, definitely go out to F5's website and check it out. I'm going to read here a couple stats because it was interesting. F5 found only 2% of organizations are quote unquote highly ready for AI innovation, while 21% showed a low level of readiness, with that vast middle, 77% stuck in the middle somewhere. Shawn, what are you and F5? What are you seeing that separates that 2% that are truly ready from everywhere else? Where's the delta there?
Yeah, I think when you look at, being, truly ready to deploy AI and truly get the benefits out of it, I think there's always the sort of pinnacle of any technology and the companies who get the most out of it. And then, there's always the kind of 2%, but that big middle, there's a couple of key things. First is I think that you have to have kind of this foundational cybersecurity framework, and it has to also include AI, right? So you have to have your basic security hygiene under control, and many companies don't even have that on to start with. But then when you add in AI, it makes it even more complicated. The second one is around the data quality and the security of the data that they have, right? So obviously with AI, data is reliant, or the cleanliness of the data, the security of the data, and the unbiasedness of the data is critical for AI to be successful. And a lot of organizations out there have struggled to get their data, under control. It's fragmented. It has a lack of governance, that's out there, and I think that can cause some serious and significant hurdles for people to get to that high amount of readiness. The other one is, the tool stacks that we have. They're everywhere. They're disconnected. The integration can be complex, and in AI, so many of the new security tools are coming from newer, smaller, emerging companies and startups, which makes that problem, even worse. And the ability to bring all of those things together to get real-time kind of threat intelligence and threat sharing across AI applications and deployments is really challenging. We obviously talked about workforce capability gaps. That's out there. But then just the overall, I think, governance framework is immature and still developing, right? I think we see changes to that happening every day. And oftentimes inside of companies, it's not even clear who's accountable for making AI decisions or who's accountable for those security outcomes. Is it the AI team? Is it the app team? Is it the security team? And I think that lack of alignment and accountability can also leave organizations vulnerable and leads to that lack of readiness.
Well, Chris, Shawn mentions that, the explosion of tools that are now leveraging AI. I know before Gen AI exploded onto the scene, we were already advising clients and organizations to consolidate that tool set. Is that one of the key functions that you think is holding organizations back from being in that top tier 2%? Or what else is contributing to all this?
Yeah, I love the direction that Shawn was going on that. And I think for those who know me really well, I'm just grounded in you have to be brilliant at the fundamentals. You need to understand your inventory. You need to understand what's on your network and what is it doing. Should it be there? I've said that now for years and years. And if you don't get that right, you can't advance your business, and especially things around AI. So, I mean, Shawn, I love being grounded in those fundamentals. And I think candidly, where what we're seeing when we talk to CISOs, they tell us they feel the pressure from the business to continue to move faster, but they're inheriting systems that maybe weren't designed for AI workloads. So we're seeing a lot of shadow AI. So we're seeing unsanctioned models, we're seeing ungoverned data, and then of course, exposed APIs. And that's a big deal. And so what customers want is help building that, I'll call it the secure landing zones, where innovation and security can scale together, not independently. So when I think about one of our big initiatives here is just making sure that digital transformation, AI, and cyber are one unified conversation and not done in silos. And that's where the problem lies.
Yeah, Shawn, Chris mentions, exposed APIs and how that's a big deal. Just for those that may not be aware, why is that such a big deal in this, evolving, rapidly changing landscape of AI?
Yeah, I think with AI, there's a couple of things with the exposed, APIs that are out there. First and foremost is that you have to protect your APIs. You have to be able to control who's using them, what they're using them for. But in particular with AI, we have almost a new layer in the OSI model. Sometimes around here at F5, we call it the layer 8, right? Because now you're much more concerned, obviously, with the context and the responses and what's being asked. And that can put you, those exposed API endpoints can put you at risk to people targeting your models that are running behind those APIs, allowing you to ask questions of it, to get responses that may return, whether it's proprietary data that an attacker might be trying to get, or even just data inside the company that the requester shouldn't have access to. Many of these models, with the lack of data governance that's behind them, have sensitive information in them. And with these unprotected API endpoints, you leave yourself exposed to data exfiltration attacks. You leave yourself exposed to token-based attacks, denial of service attacks. And I think with AI, there's a whole new level of complexity that we have to consider with the APIs that are out there.
Yeah, Chris, knowing that complexity is growing faster and faster, what does that mean in practice for what the term highly ready looks like for security teams or organizations in general? What does that mean for what highly ready looks like today, or even, 6, 12, 18 months from now?
Well, we've been talking about it here. So, it's not tools, it's operating model maturity. I just think about it. I go back in history and just kind of look at where organizations are aligned, or where they have misalignment. I just think of some basic things like ML ops and sec ops. Security teams know how to manage risk really well. AI teams know how to build models. But as I just mentioned a minute ago, they work in silos. And so we really need to bridge that gap. I can't emphasize that enough. We need to bridge that gap by embedding security directly into the AI lifecycle, just like we did with the software development lifecycle, embedding security along the way. And we have a theme here at Worldwide, and Brian, you and I have talked about this offline in the past, is like no more naked AI. So we need to make sure that we're doing that, securing it from chip to cloud.
Yeah, and Chris, I think that's a great point, because when you look at how people are using AI today compared to where they may be in 12 or 18 months from now, we'll be using and relying on AI to make more and more decisions for us, to take actions, on us without humans always, in the loop when they're taking these actions, especially as more agentic type AI gets rolled out. And without that kind of core, secure operational foundation underneath it, the trust that you have in these things just can't be there. Not that it won't be there, it just can't be there without having that trust built in. And we're gonna, as we rely on these things, to these new applications and these new techniques to make sometimes very serious decisions, operationally for us or business wise, without that trust, I think the whole thing can break down pretty quickly.
Yep.
So we're obviously living through this time, this shift where, the same technology that's powering breakthrough defenses to help us remain secure is also powering these next gen attacks. So, I'm curious, from a product perspective, Shawn, we can start with you. How is that reshaping how the way security products actually function? Not just blocking threats, but predicting, adapting, acting in real time, and, staying ahead of the curve, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that as from a product perspective, and I think it unlocks a whole new set of capabilities that we can offer our customers and bring a lot of value to them. Things like behavioral analytics, for example, to be able to really detect deviations in user behavior in ways that we've never been able to do before, and to sort of discover new attack patterns, as they're emerging and as they're happening, rather than after they've had some catastrophic effects. Obviously, predictive analytics is there as we continue to leverage AI to analyze the vast amounts of data that's out there and that our our customers and our users are collecting from their networks and their applications. We can start to get closer to that real time defense type of products that we've had before. We don't need to wait days or weeks or sometimes even months for signatures, for example, to come out to adapt to these new behaviors and these new attacks. And then, that leads into a little bit of the adaptive security policies. We've always talked about self-healing networks and self-healing security systems. I think we're getting closer. We're getting much closer to that with AI. And then I think, at the end of all of that, I really think you can use AI and this may not be so much a product thing, but maybe a process thing or a communication thing, really transforming the way we do incident response, right? We can really start to surface more high fidelity alerts for teams to focus on, for customers to focus on, and really help narrow what they're looking at to focus on the most important things that are there.
Well said.
Yeah, Chris, Shawn's mentioning policy there, which has me thinking about, guardrails and governance and what type of visibility is needed. Before we can automate and scale AI to lead towards that, self-healing network, what types of guardrails and governance are we talking about that need to be put into place so that we do avoid that naked AI situation?
Yeah, no doubt about it. I was at one of our advisory board meetings not too long ago, and one of the questions that came up to me was around just, my thoughts and opinions on automation in general. And again, going back to being grounded in fundamentals, it's like, well, you can't automate unless you understand what you have and what your inventory and what the purposes of those devices on your network are doing before you can go out and automate those things. And so many people just want to jump all the way to the end and the outcome without thinking about those basic hygiene things as we were continuing to talk about here. So for me is, getting highly ready means being able to measure AI risk and just not talk about it. So for today, readiness means let's start with basic governance. As we talked about, Shawn's mentioned it now a few times, policy, visibility, knowing what models you're running. And where your data flows. If you look ahead, you go out 12 months from now, readiness will mean continuous red teaming. Shawn talked about incident response. I just love hearing him talk about that. Runtime guardrails and unified observability across AI and across your infrastructure. And that's really the direction that we're moving with our partners like F5, in the WWT AI proving ground, and turning that readiness into something quantifiable.
Yeah. And I think, Chris, too, when you look at, you talked earlier about the kind of governance model and the new types of development life cycles for AI applications and the way we generate these things. There's a number of things that I think that we haven't really had to consider before in software development that we're going to have to also be able to explain to our customers. For example, algorithm accountability. Being able to document how and why AI models that you're generating and using make the decisions that they make. Being able to, detect and prevent bias that's coming from those systems that you may be exposing your customers to. Yeah. Increasing the explainability and the transparency, for example, of the models and the data provenance that's behind the data that you use to train your models to make sure that wasn't tampered with in some way and is verifiable. All of those things are going to change the way that we develop software, that we develop products, the types of questions that our customers are going to be asking of us in the future. And I think that's, it's an important part of doing business in this AI world.
Yeah. And I look at things like, frameworks as an example. So we're talking about a lot of things here, and I can probably hear our customers now saying, but is there a guideline? Is there a framework that we can follow? And there are a number of good frameworks out there. And we have just developed an AI readiness model for operational resilience, taking it from the governance angle, as I mentioned before, and securing all the models from chip to cloud. So organizations now can look at this framework and to be able to guide their development lifecycle down the road.
This episode is supported by Red Hat. Red Hat provides open source software solutions to help modernize IT infrastructure. Accelerate innovation with Red Hat's enterprise-grade technologies.
Yeah, Chris, maybe dive a little bit deeper into that framework. The how and why we developed it, and where it might be, how it might evolve going forward.
Yeah, so I made a comment a little bit ago called "No More Naked AI," and so I see all of these AI clusters that are being built for our customers, and we got to think: are you securing this? At Worldwide, security is embedded into everything we do and everything that we sell. So it doesn't matter if it's route switch, data center, cloud. Security needs to be a part of that, and we're now doing the same thing with AI. And it's not new to Worldwide. I mean, it's something that we've been doing now for a long time. But now customers have something that they can refer to, and we can implement that. So go back to turning that readiness into something quantifiable. Our AI model is going to help with that for sure. And then people can use it in our AI proving ground. They can leverage it there too.
Yeah. Shawn, I want to pivot or go back a little bit to some of the guardrail conversations that we were having. F5 recently acquired Calypso AI to give organizations those guardrails that they need to scale AI safely. Tell me a little bit more about that acquisition, why it makes sense for the market right now. And is that going to kind of address some of those vulnerabilities or establish some of the guardrails that organizations will need increasingly in the future?
Yeah, so thanks, Brian. I think the Calypso acquisition, was obviously a very exciting acquisition for us. We felt that, and still feel that Calypso was the leading AI guardrails and AI red teaming company that was out there, and we're so excited to have them a part of the F5 family. And to release those guardrails and red teaming capabilities as part of our overall F5 application delivery security platform. The Calypso solution, or we call them now F5 AI guardrails and F5 AI red team, those two components really work together to help customers ensure that at inference time, the transactions that are happening between their models are safe and secure. So they really specialize in ensuring that you have secure and ethical AI deployments. And that's, obviously critical to the conversation that we've been having today. You can't have naked AI or ungoverned AI because that leads to all kinds of liabilities and risks in the business. And so, the guardrail protection that we have allows you to be compliant. It allows you to keep bad things from going not only into your model, but also out of your model and protect your users from that, while the red teaming product continually tests the models that you're using to find vulnerabilities and help bring that continuous feedback loop then into guardrails so that you can protect your users against any vulnerabilities, biases, or any other kind of compliance needs that you need there. So, it's a really, fantastic solution. We're excited to have it here. We've seen great success already, in the market with it, and great customer feedback. And so this is really the kind of the future and the core of AI security for F5 moving forward.
Yeah, Chris, any commentary on that acquisition, or even anything more in terms of the broader M&A landscape? As we talked at the top of this episode about just the explosion of tools, AI startups, whether it's cyber or otherwise. What do you think we might see in the M&A space, and what does that mean for cyber teams who really have to just be drilling it day in, day out to make sure that we're secure?
Yeah, we talked about it earlier, just about that tool sprawl, and I think the average enterprise has something like 75 to 125 unique products. That's a lot. It's a lot to manage. It's a lot to integrate, and so forth. I mean, we're evaluating right now, I think, over 295 AI security startups, and just trying to figure out what problems do they solve, how do they do it, what makes them different, how can they best partner with organizations like F5. So I expect there's going to be a lot of consolidation here in the near future. Almost weekly now, we're seeing some of our larger partners acquiring some of these AI startups. But back to the move of Calypso, I mean, yeah, that's great. That was a phenomenal acquisition there. Shawn just said it best, just the enablement there of continuous red teaming, policy enforcement, while that model is running, not just after fact, that's crucial, because, AI drift happens all the time. And so guardrails like that help you detect misuse, the model deviation, before it becomes a major issue. So yeah, that's a move that we all applaud here at WWT.
Yeah. Shawn, speaking of news, I'm sure there'll be plenty of great news and announcements coming out of App World, which I know you all will be hosting later this year. I believe it's out in Las Vegas. Always a great event. I'm sure you're still in planning mode for that, and so you can't get into super specific details. But broadly speaking, what should we expect out at App World? Is it going to be more towards securing agents? Are we going to be even more future facing AGI? Give us a sense for what we think we might hear.
Yeah, absolutely. So your App World is in March in Las Vegas, like you said. It's F5's premier and flagship customer event. And I always like to say, App World is really the fastest way to turn your application strategy into an executable plan. Because when we have folks come together at App World, they get hands-on labs, they get to talk to other customers and hear their stories. But I think what I've heard most from customers is they love the direct access they get to the experts that we have at F5 and the experts that we have with our partners like WWT who join us. And so I think that's one of the best benefits that I hear is they get a ton of value about that. They get to hear and sometimes commiserate with their peers in the industry about the challenges that they're having, learn from one another, spend a bunch of time with whether it's our executives, whether it's our architects, or whether it's WWT's architects. I think it's a great event. And I think what you'll see this year from themes, like you said, we're still in planning, but I think what you'll see for themes is it's focused a lot on app and AI security, obviously. Multicloud networking, which we continue to see as a big challenge and a bunch of value for our customers around connecting their hybrid and multi-cloud architectures together. We talked about it a little bit earlier. The notion of API security and management is always top of mind with our customers, and particularly with AI. The API surface area has just exploded. And we're starting to see traffic pass in new directions. So API is obviously a big part. And then Kubernetes and operations. We all know that as AI applications are deployed, they're primarily deployed in Kubernetes solutions. So our customers are having, more and more concerns about that. How do we control traffic in and around Kubernetes? And then how do we operate? How is F5 helping them operate more efficiently and effectively? And I think that we'll have, obviously demos of the Calypso AI there. And we're super excited to have WWT join us there again this year. I think they're going to be bringing some of their reference architectures for app modernization and security and observability. And they'll have architects there that you can spend time with. So it's always a great partnership with WWT. And we're super excited to welcome them back this year.
We go to Vegas a lot, as we say, for different events and whatnot, but this is one I don't miss, App World. I mean, so I think you'll see F5 and WWT together. We'll double down on AI observability. I mean, that's something that's near and dear to our hearts here. Of course, runtime guardrails, multi-cloud resilience, as you talked about. I don't know, you may or may not see a capture the flag event too with our cyber range at F5 App World too.
Yeah, I heard there was a few hackathons and a few capture the flag type activities going on, but I didn't want to spill too many secrets,
Little gamesmanship out there. Love it. Make a little bit of what might feel like a pivot here, but something that keeps popping up more and more on this podcast and in other conversations that I'm having around AI, and that's quantum computing. I think we often talk about quantum as a future issue and something that's separate from AI, but they feel like they're getting a little bit more closer as the days go by. Chris, we can start with you here. How close are we to the future of quantum computing? What's the risk? Why does it demand attention, right now?
I think we're talking about this now every day. And so I'm hosting a summit internally here within the next few weeks at our headquarters just to talk about, the impact of PQC. And so we're closer than most realize. The math behind today's encryption is already being targeted by harvest now, decrypt later strategies. In other words, the adversaries are starting to stockpile encrypted data to crack once quantum computing matures. So if your data needs to stay secure for 10 years, your quantum risk is already here. So, I mean, for us, I mean, we got to start thinking about strategies around how we're going to defend that, what the threats look like in actual practice. So testing these post-quantum cryptography today and not waiting for standards to finalize. And we're starting to think about this. We're starting to build some environments in our labs that run both classical and quantum resistant encryption. And we're using AI to help automate things like key rotation and certificate lifecycle management. So yeah, I mean, we got to start being really proactive about it because it's here.
Yeah, Shawn, what does defending against quantum threats look like to you? Is there any parallel between what we're doing from an AI readiness perspective that applies to quantum? If so, what is it? If not, what's the difference?
Well, I think, like Chris said, you have to start to address this now. And I think one of the reasons that, or one of the reasons for that is that, and especially if you're adopting AI, is the data that they're harvesting now to decrypt later is much different than just traditional API traffic and application traffic. I mean, you have human beings oftentimes asking, real questions about the business and getting responses from these models that can inform strategies and can have a ton of intellectual property and, sensitive data in them. And even though they, may not be able to decrypt them now, when they can, that can unlock a whole bunch of secrets from inside of your company. So I think, you have to start addressing that need now. You have to start adopting PQC techniques today. And from the F5 side, we're starting to think about, future generations of hardware, because hardware takes us, a long time to build and plan. But how do we integrate, quantum resistant ciphers into the chipsets that we're using? How do we ensure that we can adapt to these things, in the future? And how do we use, like Chris said, AI to help, monitor what's going on here and monitor the progress that our adversaries are making within the network. So I think it's really important that we address it now. I don't think it's like one of those IPv6 problems where we can continue to kick it down the road. I think that the value behind solving this problem for the adversaries is much higher than kind of the value that was driving, IPv6. And I think this is going to be a really important thing for us to address over the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, Chris, it feels like with, thinking back a couple of years ago with the explosion of ChatGPT, which onset for Gen AI in general, it felt like a lot of people were kind of caught flat-foot. Do you get the sense that maybe quantum is going to be the same situation, or did we kind of learn from that mistake and where we are a little bit more forward-thinking as an industry related to defense in the quantum era?
I'd like to think what I'm seeing so far is that I think we're going to just repeat history. It's just going to be a last-minute thing. People are going to be scrambling to get themselves ready. I think that's why we're taking a stance right now, is just developing some workshops and briefings for our customers to understand the problem set. What do they have? What's their inventory look like? So from our lens, yes, we're trying to get way ahead of it right now, because Q-Day, and Shawn, keep me honest on this, it could be as early as 27, 28.
Yeah, so it could be.
It's right around the corner.
Q-Day. I mean, anytime you just have a letter followed by day, that's always ominous and scary. But let's go back to that F5 research and get, refocus here on AI, and we'll close out the episode here after this. Whether it's lessons learned from 2025 that can be applied in 2026, or whether it's, just best practices that we've already touched on in this great conversation, what are the first few things that CISOs or their teams need to be doing right now so that they can start to creep into that upper tier 2% of AI readiness? Chris, we can start with you, and then Shawn, you can close us out.
Yeah, so I guess just starting with, we learned that AI security, it's a team sport. I've been saying security is a team sport now for years. So it's organizations making the most progress are the ones that unify cyber, data, and AI under one strategy. And I talked about digital transformation, AI and cyber. It needs to be one unified strategy, not separate roadmaps. And that's where we need to start.
Yeah, Shawn, final thoughts.
Yeah, I think when I kind of look forward, I try to think of things in odd numbers. So I think there's three kind of things that CISOs or CIOs need to think about today. The first one, I think, is that they need to really build foundational AI governance in their companies, right? So frameworks and platforms that really help you address the security, the accountability, the transparency, and the ethics of the AI that they're using and that they're deploying. Second one is I think they need to invest in AI lifecycle security. And so these are tools and processes that really help secure the training and the deployment and the monitoring of the models that they're using. And the last is a lot what Chris talked about, is that security and AI security can't be siloed. You have to create cross-functional approaches between the security team, DevOps team, legal, operations, compliance, data. All of these teams need to come together to have a unified approach to securing AI.
Yeah, one more thing I just want to add here too, and I think we're all in agreement on, is just around workforce enablement. I mean, the most sophisticated AI defense, whatever you have, still fails without trained operators who can interpret and can act. When I look at the hacking community today and our adversaries, they're not hacking, they're logging in. So we got to think about that. So workforce enablement to me is really important.
Absolutely. Definitely not to be left unsaid. We'll wrap up there. Chris and Shawn, thank you so much. Chris, always great to have you on. I'm sure we'll have you on again here soon. And Shawn, thank you for joining. And we'll see you out in the desert for App World here coming up in a few short months. So to the two of you, thank you so much for joining.
Great. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Okay, today's conversation made clear AI is creating real opportunity, but it also demands a clearer playbook, certainly for the security perspective. The organizations making progress are the ones tightening their fundamentals, getting their data and governance in order, and making sure security has a seat at the table from the beginning. If this episode sparked any ideas or questions, share it with a colleague and send us a note about what you'd like to see us dig into next. This episode of the AI Proving Ground podcast was co-produced by Naz Baker and Kara Kuhn. Our audio and video engineer is John Knobloch. My name is Brian Felt. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.